One of the very first babies that was saved as a direct result of PassionLife's work on the island of Cuba was a little boy named Matthew. Now, our first trip to Cuba was in November of 2016. Cuba, if you're not aware, has the highest abortion rate of all countries in the world with a population of 10 million people or more. They are the world's leader in abortion. I noticed Alvaro on my first day there. Alvaro was an 18-year-old young man, very good looking, obviously a leader among his peers. And Alvaro's family was a part of the church where we were first teaching what we call our 4 questions training, or our biblical training on the value of human life while we were there. And Alvaro, as an 18-year-old, was one of the vocal leaders on the worship team at the church where we were teaching. Now, there were not a lot of young people who came to that first conference that we did on abortion and the implications on abortion, on the way that Christians are to treat human life, including life in the womb. But because Alvaro was on the worship team, which was leading songs throughout the entirety of the day that we were teaching, he stayed and he listened to the entire event. Now, we didn't know it at the time, but Alvaro had been dating another girl from the church. Her name was Veronica. They had been together for about a year, and not too long after we left Cuba from that first trip and returned to the United States, Veronica discovered that she was pregnant. Veronica and Alvaro were both in their teens at this time, and both of them had parents who were very prominent members of that church and in that community, which was a small island town where everybody knew everybody. Everybody was in each other's business. And it was Veronica's father who made the decree that this baby was going to be aborted. Veronica's father had no intention of suffering the embarrassment of everyone in that town finding out that his daughter was pregnant outside of wedlock. And he resolved to deal with it quickly and quietly by arranging the abortion himself. But it was Alvaro, the 18-year-old father of the baby, who never wavered in his moral clarity on understanding what was at stake. He was listening during the biblical training that Passion Life presented at his church just those weeks before, and Alvaro knew without any question that human rights begin at the moment at which any one of us becomes a member of the human family. He had been convinced, both from the Bible and from science, that life begins at conception. And therefore, human rights, human dignity, human value also begin at conception. Each human life is made in the image of God and has intrinsic, equal, exceptional, and eternal value right from the earliest moments of pregnancy. Alvaro had also become solidly convinced that the shedding of innocent blood, or what we call murder, is a preeminently offensive sin to God, specifically because it intentionally takes the life of an innocent human being that God's created in his image. Murder provokes God to anger, justifiably so, because allowing harm to come to any one of his created human beings is like an assault on the image of God himself, on God himself. So in other words, we can't murder human beings, and nor can we stand idly by when harm is being inflicted on other human beings which are made in the image of God. We have to do something to intervene. Knowing these things, Alvaro had become convinced, in his words, that abortion is murder because it intentionally takes the life of an innocent member of the human family, a human being with inherent value, human life that was endowed by the Creator with inalienable human rights, the first among which is the basic right to life. So it was Alvaro who went to Veronica's father. He confessed that he had been wrong to have been sleeping with his daughter out of wedlock. He took full responsibility for the fact that she was pregnant with his child, and he informed the father that he would never approve of the abortion of this baby. He would do whatever it took to stand in the gap for the life of this, his son. And as a first step, he immediately proposed marriage to Veronica. Now, Veronica accepted that marriage proposal. They were engaged, and the two of them went immediately before the church to tell their story. They confessed that they had been wrong. Alvaro incidentally resigned his position on the worship team that day. They asked the church to forgive them and to restore them and to support them as they entered into marriage and into parenthood, which the church did with rejoicing. 9 months later, baby Matthew was born, healthy and happy, and that was the first baby that was saved on the island of Cuba as a direct result of the ministry of PassionLife in that nation. Now, since then, hundreds of babies have been saved from abortion, from one end of the island to the other. And scores of volunteer leaders have been trained and raised up to defend human life and to teach others to do the same. Not only that, but the stories of the Cuban people have gone around the world as the Cubans have stood up against the cultural tide of abortion in their nation. We, PassionLife, have been traveling around the world to dozens of other countries telling their stories. And so when we do that, the Christians in Kazakhstan and Vietnam and Ethiopia stand up with one voice and they say, God, make us like the Christians of Cuba. Christians who stand in the gap for the defense of human life at its most vulnerable stage. We are blessed to have been called by God to travel the world and to teach Christians about the biblical and moral implications that are involved in the issue of abortion. Just as Alvaro and Victoria stood with moral clarity on that issue. And we cannot continue to go, nor can we continue to grow this ministry without people like you praying for us and giving to the work that we do. For that reason, when people like Alvaro and Veronica stand in the gap and a baby is saved to the glory of God, you will share in that victory celebration with us. We are no more significant in this ministry for going than you are for making it possible for us to go by praying and giving to the work. It takes you and us working together. We're asking you to be a part of stories like Alvaro's and Veronica's. Go to the PassionLife.org website right now and make a donation to keep sending us out. And sign up while you're there for the Passion Life newsletter so that you can keep hearing the encouraging stories that are coming in from around the world of the impact that your gift is making.